Welcome back to more Club World Cup fantasy content. This will be my latest draft and this will be the final one that I'll be showing you because next up will be my team selection and I'll lock everything in during that deadline stream on Saturday night, and it will be a midnight deadline, so to speak, at 12 AM UK time on the 15th of June. It'd be great to have you on board. So 1 or 2 hours before that deadline, I'll be going live answering all your questions as I usually do for FPL and UCL Fantasy. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also the notification bell so you never miss a single upload or live stream for FPL, UCL Fantasy, and other Club World Cup. On screen, you can see all the teams participating in this tournament. And remember, we had one change. Club Lyon have been replaced by Los Angeles. This has been covered in all of my recent videos, and I talk about all the groups and actually every single team and their possible lineups in Matchday 1 in my Predicted Lineups podcast. So be sure to check it out if you haven't already. And I've also shown you different stats, which includes what you see on screen now, which is by Opta, ranking all the teams in order of how good they are in general. And that's just one metric. For example, there are different ways of kind of measuring these teams, but ultimately we're focused on the Club World Cup fantasy aspect of it, picking the best players for our squads, and everything is dissected in my how to play guide and also the chip strategy video. If you watch those two and the predicted lineups, you have a great understanding of all the teams and how to do really well in this format. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. One of the most common questions I've been asked in most of my videos is how do I play this game? And the simple answer is there is an app. You go to FIFA, you download this app and go to the play section and you can easily find Club World Cup Fantasy. In terms of the website, it's also similar. You go to the FIFA website, then the play zone section, and you can also find it that way. And there are links in the description, like the one to my mini league. So if you actually click that, you can automatically become a part of my league, create an account very easily if you don't have one already, and also make a squad for Club World Cup Fantasy. The first deadline is on the 15th of June at midnight in the UK, as discussed before. And check out all the links in the description for my Patreon and the championships, links to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, Club World Cup Fantasy League, and Spotify can also be found in the description. And there's a lot more headed your way. If you want to see a best budget players, differentials, and maybe even players to avoid, then let me know down in the comment section below. And all the reception in terms of shares, likes, and subscriptions will go a long way in determining how much you want to see new content and also more to cover Club World Cup Fantasy in the best possible way. But the team selection and deadline streams are guaranteed to also be on the horizon in the next couple of days. But let's start off with the two goalkeepers of this latest draft, and I've only got 0.1 million in the bank after building this 15-man squad. As covered in my how to play guide, there is a rule which actually indicates you get additional points in terms of scouting bonus. So if one of your players has less than 5% ownership and they score more than 4 points, they will get 2 additional points on their score. And I think the goalkeepers and defenders is probably the best positions to kind of target these differentials, because all they need to do is keep a clean sheet, and some of them have great fixtures in Matchday 1, like Juventus and Di Gregorio facing Al Ain, and the Italian kept 14 clean sheets in 33 Serie A matches, helping Juventus qualify for the Champions League next season. He only delivered 3 clean sheets though in UCL Fantasy in this campaign, and he was sent off against RB Leipzig, and yes, I had him in my bloody team. Across both competitions, he made 92 saves and has become Juventus's undisputed goalkeeper, and at this moment in time, Perrin is injured anyway, so Di Gregorio will start in Matchday 1, and he's a very good pick at 4.9% ownership and 5.3 million in terms of his price tag. But as you can see, he's on the precipice of 5% ownership. He needs to have less than 5% ownership, and that's how he can qualify for the scouting bonus. So if he does reach that 5% threshold, then you might as well go for another goalkeeper if you're backing the likes of Inter Milan a little bit more defensively, maybe in terms of their fixtures or other factors as well that need to come into play. But I think Juventus have a decent group overall, facing Al Ain, Wydad Casablanca, and Man City. So it's only Matchday 3 that looks problematic for the likes of Cambiasso in that defensive line, or any Juventus asset in general, which includes Di Gregorio. But you could actually start with Di Gregorio in Matchday 1, then wildcard in either 2 or 3. And honestly, the way the fixtures have panned out, I think Di Gregorio can do very well for the first 2 game weeks, and then you can offload him when he's about to face Man City. But Juventus beat them in the Champions League earlier this season, and in fact kept a clean sheet. Di Gregorio there trolled me a little bit in UCL Fantasy. But the second goalkeeper is Armani, who has been a lock in all of my drafts. Now you have other goalkeepers at a similar price, like Ben Abid and also Marchesín at 4.1 million in that case, but Armani is only 4 million and he is the undisputed star for River Plate, or River as they say in Argentina. Now Armani has kept 2 clean sheets across 6 matches in the Copa Libertadores, which is the equivalent of the Champions League in South America, and he has only made 5 saves in that competition, but he's also kept 5 clean sheets in the Argentinian league across 15 games, making 48 saves in that competition, so those stats are a bit more impressive. And River have only kept 2 clean sheets out of the last 10 matches overall, so they aren't the most reliable defensively, but facing Urawa Red Diamonds and Monterrey in the first 2 match days, I think Armani offers exceptional value at 4 million, and its ownership is still quite low at 14% as your backup goalkeeper. And with substitutions, you don't need to bench him per se. You can start him and then sub him out for Di Gregorio, who plays later in Matchday 1. But Inter Milan in Matchday 3 does look quite tough, I think, for River, and they wouldn't be the favourites in that particular game, but I still think they have a chance of winning that match and also topping their group. But realistically, they'll probably finish second. At least that's how things would be perceived by a lot of neutrals and those who watch football in general. But I like this goalkeeper combination. There is no concerns in terms of having Kobel and Armani on the same day and only having a 1-hour window in terms of subbing out Kobel for Armani if needed. So with this one, you've got a bit more time to make that change if needed, and I think both of them have a great chance of a clean sheet in match days 1 and 2. Denzel Dumfries also makes a return from the first draft video and podcast. I had him in UCL Fantasy as well towards the latter stages of that tournament. He scored recently in a 2-0 win versus Finland to make it 4 goals and 4 assists in the last 10 matches for both club and country. He also delivered 5 goal contributions in the Champions League. All of them came against Barcelona in the semi-finals. The Dutchman only started 20 out of 29 Serie A matches, but he scored 7 goals and amassed 2 assists, earning 2 penalties in the process, and for each penalty earned, you gain 2 points, even if it's missed by the penalty taker. He picked up 4 bookings in Serie A, as well as 2 in Europe, which isn't too shabby as a disciplinary record overall, and his ownership is 40.2%, so it has dropped from the first draft video when it was around probably 50% at the time, and his price tag is 6.3 million, facing Monterrey in Matchday 1, followed by Urawa Red Diamonds, and then River Plate in Matchday 3. So the fixtures are quite good overall, and I still don't mind that defensive double up for Inter Milan, but if you are ranking their best assets, I think Dumfries is probably top overall because of the attacking threat combined with the chance of Inter Milan keeping clean sheets. But you're not going to get any scouting bonus from Dumfries. I'm going to tell you that right now because he's such a template pick, but the explosiveness makes him a very reliable and also fun asset to own in UCL Fantasy. We also saw it at the Euros and the World Cup, and now we have yet another fantasy game to enjoy Denzel Dumfries and his football in Club World Cup Fantasy as well. But next up is going to be a differential defender who can qualify for the scouting bonus, and that's Stanisic, who costs 4.9 million, so he's not a budget option per se. I would call him a mid-price defender in this game. He is a differential way, though, of covering Bayern Munich defensively, with Eric Dyer leaving for Monaco in July, and he could still play some matches in the group stages, by the way, because they have an injury crisis, and that includes Kim Min-jae being out injured for the whole tournament. Upamecano will likely miss the entire group stages. Stanisic should be a clear starter, but will Bayern Munich's chance of a clean sheet be impacted by those absentees? Probably. I think they will struggle maybe in match days 2 and 3 to maybe be solid defensively and win those games as comfortably as they probably would have done with all those players available. The Croatian started 9 Bundesliga games as well as 4 Champions League matches. He only got 2 assists in the league, but his versatility has proven useful. For the Bavarians, he is playing in central defence, but for Croatia, only a couple of days ago, he started as a right-back in a 7-0 win there. His ownership is only 3.6%, so he could be safe from reaching that 5% threshold and thus not qualifying for the scouting bonus. And facing Auckland City in Matchday 1, that is a great opportunity for a clean sheet, irrespective of the injuries. Then it's Boca Juniors and Benfica, which are tougher opponents, and they could cause some problems there for that Bayern Munich defence. But with that low ownership and also that 4.9 million price tag, I think Stanisic is definitely worth considering, and I think a lot of people will double, triple, or even quadruple up on Bayern Munich. And you might be asking, how can you do that in the group stages when you can only pick 3 players from the same club? Well, you can use the 12th man in Matchday 1 and go for 4 Bayern Munich players. That is another viable strategy, which I can talk about in the deadline stream as well. But the third defender is someone I covered in my updated draft, and he offers insane value at 4.1 million. He won't qualify for the scouting bonus because he has quite high ownership because of how good he is as a Club World Cup fantasy asset, and that's Francisco Moura, who faces the likes of Inter Miami in Matchday 2, Palmeiras in Matchday 1, and Al Ahly to round things off. I think Porto are the favourites to win that group. I know Messi's at Inter Miami, but I still think Porto are a better team overall. Now, Moura has a sensational record from left wing back with 2 goals and 5 assists over the last 10 matches. He's also picked up 2 bookings in that time frame, and over the course of the season, he's kept 11 clean sheets, scored 3 goals, and delivered 10 assists across 30 starts in the Portuguese league. And the 25-year-old was only booked twice in that competition. In the Europa League, it wasn't as impressive, but he still scored in that competition with an assist and a clean sheet across 9 matches. The ownership is 13%, so it's not that high. He isn't a template pick like Denzel Dumfries, but he's also not a differential like Stanisic. But that 4.1 million price tag is ridiculous. I know you've got plenty of 4 million starting defenders across all the teams, which I covered in my predicted lineups video, but I think Francisco Moura is by far the best option at that price tag and below. Now, this could prove useful in terms of drawing out money from the defensive line and reinvesting it in the midfield and forward line, where you generally have a higher ceiling from these assets, particularly the big hitters. But next up is Ryerson. Now, his ownership is over 5%, and you could go for the likes of Ben Sabani or Svensson, who both have less than 5% ownership. So if they keep a clean sheet, they'll score 2 additional points over Ryerson. And in the case of Svensson, he is on set pieces, including corners, so he might offer more attacking potential than the other wing backs. So Ryerson is really there for the budget, but if you do draw money out from other areas, I think it could be worth going for a differential like Svensson or Ben Sabani. But Ryerson scored twice and made 3 assists in 29 Bundesliga appearances. He also started 11 Champions League games, and he was unable to deliver any goal contributions in UCL Fantasy. Borussia Dortmund kept 3 clean sheets in that competition, with Ryerson in the side and only 4 in the Bundesliga. The right wing back started for Norway in their 3-0 win over Italy. His ownership is 8%, so it's still quite low, but unfortunately it doesn't qualify for those all-important scouting bonus points, and the price tag is very good at 4.9 million, identical to Stanisic. And in terms of group opponents, Borussia Dortmund faced Fluminense in Matchday 1, which is arguably the toughest they have throughout the group stages. Then it's Mamelodi Sundowns, followed by Ulsan HD, who are arguably the worst team in that group. But I think it's worth going for 1 or 2 Borussia Dortmund assets, maybe even a triple up in certain cases, but more so in Matchdays 2 and 3. But the final defender is yet another differential in Levi Colwill, but I think Cucurella might offer a bit more security and also attacking potential, and he only costs 0.5 million more. But Colwill will get those additional 2 points if Chelsea keep a clean sheet, or if Colwill just does something and scores more than 4 points in a game, provided his ownership stays at under 5%. It's currently at 3.7 at the time of this recording. But Colwill started 35 Premier League matches and got 3 goal contributions in that competition. Chelsea kept 10 clean sheets, and Colwill was booked 9 times, conceding a penalty, making him the only defender in this 50-man squad to do so. He didn't start a single Europa Conference League game, so he isn't a guaranteed star like Cucurella, and the main appeal behind this pick is the potential for the scouting bonus, similar to Di Gregorio, Stanisic, and possibly one of Svensson or Ben Sabani, as I'll show you later on. But Colwill faces Los Angeles FC in the opening match day, followed by Flamengo and ES Tunis, so Chelsea will be the favourites in every single one of those games, but I think Flamengo could be quite tough in match day 2. But I look at the other 2 opponents, and I really think Chelsea could win those games, keep clean sheets, and the likes of Levi Colwill, if he starts, could be a great option in Club World Cup fantasy. Despite being heavily linked to PSG, Mastantuono will join Real Madrid after this Club World Cup has ended, so he will play for River Plate in this competition, and he became Argentina's youngest debutant in the Lionel Scaloni era as Argentina defeated Chile 1-0. The promising playmaker started every Copa Libertadores match so far this season, scoring twice and earning a penalty. He also has shown incredible consistency for a 17-year-old with 8 goal contributions in just 12 league matches, and over the past 10 matches for River, he has scored 5 goals and picked up 2 assists with 4 bookings in that time frame, which is a little bit too much, especially for a midfielder, but he costs 4.3 million. He has that high potential and also different avenues to points. That includes penalty duties. He does have them for River, so that is another string to his bow, and he's a very good Club World Cup fantasy asset at this price tag. His ownership is 18.6%, and he also faces Aurora Red Diamonds, Monterrey, and Inter Milan in the group stages. So I think River could go quite far in this competition, and in terms of the best assets they have to offer, they're both in this squad, Mastantuono and Armani. But the next midfielder is a template pick and also a premium in Michael Olise. Only two midfielders cost more than him in this game, in Dembele, who is injured for the entire group stages, and Cole Palmer. So I think Olise does stand out, and he is in sensational form overall, producing a goal and an assist over the last 4 games for Bayern Munich. He also scored versus Germany in a 2-0 win in the Nations League third place playoff. The last time Olise blanked at club level was in a 2-2 draw versus Inter Milan back in April. The Frenchman produced 12 goals and 15 assists in an impressive debut campaign. He also accumulated 7 goal contributions across 14 Champions League appearances. The ownership, though, is quite steep at 37.4%, but he is template for a reason. He faces Auckland City in Matchday 1, and that's where you want to load up on Bayern Munich if possible. And I'd highly recommend having at least one Bayern Munich attacker, unless you're fancying Auckland City for an upset. And if that's the case, fair enough, you can always play the game in a different way, but I think it makes a lot of sense, and it's a logical move to go for Olise and Harry Kane simultaneously. You can also go for low-end picks like Kingsley Coman, who's probably my third favourite Bayern Munich attacker right now. The likes of Gnabry and Thomas Müller will be competing for that final spot, and I think Müller will start several games in the group stages, but his contract does run out in July, so we'll see if he can maybe play the entirety of this tournament and then bid farewell to Bayern Munich. But next up is a budget midfielder from Porto in Rodrigo Moura, who costs 4.2 million, and the ownership is still quite low at 9%, but I have trimmed it down from the Porto triple up I discussed in my update draft. That means no Agoa in the forward line. I have gone in a different direction in that particular position, but Moura got 7 goals and 1 assist over the last 10 competitive matches, and he scored 10 goals and 4 assists in 23 league games for Porto. He wasn't able to translate this to the Europa League with 2 starts and no goal contributions. After playing 71 minutes versus Wydad Casablanca in a friendly, he was an unused sub in Portugal's 2-1 win over Germany, and of course they beat Spain on penalties in the Nations League final. But the fixtures are good for Porto overall. I think it's worth going for 1 or 2 of their assets, but Palmeiras could be tougher than people expect, and I think Porto and Palmeiras would be the favourites to go through to the next round, and Inter Miami have been quite poor this season, so I'd be backing Porto to win most of these games in the group phase and then go quite far in this competition. But next up is a more expensive and high-roam player in Adeyemi, and Borussia Dortmund have excellent fixtures in the group stages between matchdays 1 to 3. Now, you might be familiar with Adeyemi from UCL Fantasy. He was very impressive, especially in the league phase. He scored 7 and assisted 6 across 25 Bundesliga games, starting 17 of them in the process. He earned 2 penalties in the Champions League, producing 5 goals and 1 assist in 10 appearances. This includes a first-half hat-trick versus Celtic in Matchday 2, I believe. The German international featured for his country in the Nations League versus Portugal and France. The ownership figure is 11.5%. The price tag is quite decent at 8 million. And facing Fluminense, Mamelodi Sundowns, and Ulsan HD, I think that Borussia Dortmund double-up could be worthwhile. And in some cases, going for Guirassy up front is also very enticing. But now let's complete this midfield with a familiar face who I discussed in my first draft, in Enzo Fernandez. He's someone I don't typically like in FPL, for example, but I think he has a lot to offer in Club World Cup Fantasy. He scored the equaliser in the Europa Conference League final. He also gave an assist in a 4-1 win versus Real Betis. The Argentine produced 2 goals and 6 assists in that competition. He also got 6 goals and 7 assists in 32 Premier League starts. His ownership is 10.8%, and the price tag is just 6.2 million, so he is quite affordable. He's got good fixtures overall, facing Los Angeles, Flamengo, and ES Tunis, so I think he's definitely worth considering, and apart from Cole Palmer, he's probably the best Chelsea midfielder in the game. It's difficult to separate a lot of these premium forwards, and they have such a high ceiling, great fixtures, and great goal-scoring records, but Harry Kane might be the very best for Matchday 1, facing Auckland City, who are the worst-ranked team, according to Opta, as shown at the beginning of this video. Kane has scored in his last 5 appearances. He also scored the winner versus Andorra in a World Cup qualifier. He helped Bayern Munich lift the Bundesliga title with 26 goals, 8 assists, and 2 penalties earned in just 31 matches. The English striker also delivered 13 goal contributions in the Champions League, finishing as the joint third highest goal scorer in that tournament. No player scored more goals than Kane since he joined Bayern Munich, with 83 goals in 92 matches, with 41.3% in terms of ownership and an 11 million price tag, which is the joint highest in the game. I think he is still well worth the money, and he's a template pick, but there's a good reason for it. He is one of the best captaincy options for Matchday 1, 2 and 3, but especially for the upcoming deadline, I think he might be the very best option for the 12th man or just for the captaincy, especially on the 15th of June there, with Bayern Munich being one of the first teams featuring in this competition. But next up is going to be another 11 million forward in Erling Haaland. He scored in a 3-0 win over Italy, and despite also returning in Game Week 38, his form has been kind of mixed bag since his return from injury. The Norwegian has 6 goals over the last 10 matches, and he produced 22 goals and 3 assists in 31 Premier League games, all of them were starts. His Champions League record was also exceptional, with 8 goals in just 9 matches, but the ownership is only 19.2%, so I do think Erling Haaland is going firmly under the radar. I know Marmush is significantly cheaper, and he might be an enticing option as well, but Erling Haaland is worth the money, and whether it's the 12th man or in your 15-man squad as a captaincy option, I would highly recommend him for match days 1 and 2. So he faces Wydad Casablanca in the opening game, then it's Al Ain, followed by Juventus in match day 3. So you could definitely start with Erling Haaland in this tournament and then offload him on a wildcard in match day 3 if you choose to use that chip very early. Check out my chip strategy guide, which discusses different strategies to build a very solid platform from now until the rest of this competition. But the final forward is Kylian Mbappe, another 11 million striker, and that leaves me with 0.1 million in the bank. He has scored in 8 consecutive matches for France and Real Madrid, producing 12 goals overall. He converted a penalty and provided an assist versus Spain in the Nations League semi-final, and in the Nations League third place playoff, he also scored and assisted versus Germany. Over the course of the season, he has become the main penalty taker at Real Madrid, taking over from Vinicius Jr. He won the European Golden Boot with 31 goals, 3 assists and 3 penalties earned in La Liga, and the Frenchman also scored 7 goals, earned 1 penalty and made an assist across 14 Champions League matches. The ownership is very high at 55.9%, and he faces Al Hilal in match day 1, which could be quite tough for Real Madrid, but maybe not so for Kylian Mbappe and the attackers. But I do fear for their defenders. I think a clean sheet might be quite tough to really come by, especially with their injuries at the back. But then it's Pachuca and Red Bull Salzburg. So overall, I think all of the games look quite promising there for Mbappe, and there's no doubt that Mbappe is a great captaincy option in every single match day, especially during the group stages. Let me now discuss my starting 11 and the captaincy, and there's one key change from my previous drafts. Between the sticks, I would go for Franco Armani, who plays on the 17th of June, and in essence my backup goalkeeper would be Di Gregorio, who plays on the 19th of June in the early hours of the morning, so that can cause some confusion for those in Europe like myself, but we do have a matchday 2 deadline on the 19th of June, but it'll be much later than when Di Gregorio plays against Al Ain. My defensive line includes Stanisic, Colwill, Francisco Moura and Ryerson, and in the midfield I've got Rodrigo Mora, Elise, Adeyemi, Enzo Fernandez and Mastantuono, and Harry Kane is up front, and he's also my captain. Di Gregorio, Dumfries, Haaland and Mbappe makes it a very stacked bench indeed, and the same goes for Lionel Messi as my potential 12th man. But I'm also considering something like this, where instead of having Messi as my 12th man, I can go for Mbappe instead, and that means saving 0.5 million by going for Messi in my normal team, and that means I can make an upgrade, for example Svensson in for Ryerson, who is 0.4 million more expensive, and that means I can also have another defender and player in my squad who is eligible for scouting bonus. So I think that could also work very well. And in terms of the captaincy in general, I think Harry Kane is quite settled, but I would prefer Mbappe slightly more than Messi in general. But I also think in terms of the budget and what that also means about using that extra 0.5 million in other areas, this could also work very well for my squad. And in World Cup Fantasy several years ago, I used the 12th man in matchday 1 as well on Kylian Mbappe, who delivered 9 points against Australia on that particular occasion. So I'm quite open-minded about how I go about things, but in my chip strategy, I discussed one possible route of using this chip, the 12th man, very early in the competition. I'm quite settled on that myself. And with the maximum captain, I think it could be best deployed later in the knockout stages. So check out that chip strategy video. The same goes for my how to play guide, the predicted lineups, and across all my content, like all the drafts. If you want to see players to avoid, budget players, and the best differentials, then let me know down in the comment section below and show support to the channel. But in terms of the captaincy, I'm quite settled on Harry Kane and Erling Haaland. We have reached the end of this Club World Cup Fantasy video and podcast, the latest draft heading into Matchday 1, and very soon you'll see my team selection and a deadline stream 1 or 2 hours before the official deadline, and it'll be great to have you on board there. It'll be nice preparation for UCL Fantasy and FPL next season. But thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it insightful, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also the notification bell so you never miss a single upload or live stream for all my fantasy content. Follow me on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, and check all the links in the description for my Patreon and the championships, further access to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, Club World Cup Fantasy League, and Spotify can also be found in the description. I'll see you in a couple of days' time for the first deadline stream of Club World Cup Fantasy, and the same goes for all my other content on this channel.